Have you ever felt a profound sense of loneliness as you grow older, even when surrounded by family and friends? In this video, we delve deep into the unique challenges of aging, sharing heartfelt stories like that of Grandmother Park, and exploring effective strategies to transform solitude into a source of strength and happiness. Stay with us until the end to discover 5 powerful reasons why embracing solitude can lead to a more fulfilling and peaceful life in your golden years. Whether you're navigating your journey or supporting a loved one, this video offers valuable insights to help you live well and find genuine joy in every stage of life. And if you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me. And if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. There's no need to blame oneself for feeling empty or lonely when reflecting on a life full of trials, triumphs, and profound sacrifices. It's all too common, especially in our later years, to find ourselves consumed by these emotions, wondering why we feel this sense of isolation despite living such a rich and eventful life. I want you to know that these feelings are natural, and it's important to acknowledge them without guilt. And as we grow older, especially beyond the age of 60, loneliness can begin to creep in, threatening to overshadow all the wisdom and experiences we gathered over the years. Today I want to talk about one essential method to manage this loneliness, something that must be reduced unconditionally as we enter this latter part of life. So if you are in your later years, I encourage you to stay with me throughout this entire discussion, allowing the wisdom of old age to settle deeply within your heart. This isn't just another talk, it's a moment of reflection and learning that could change the way you view your twilight years. Let's begin this journey together. Let me share with you the heart-wrenching yet deeply inspiring story of a woman I'll call Grandmother Park. Her life is a shining example of the relentless strength, unwavering endurance, and boundless love that only a mother can possess. Grandmother Park's story begins at the tender age of 18, when she married a man who was 25 years her senior. It was a different time back. Then marrying at such a young age was not uncommon, and though they didn't have much by way of material wealth, there was love and hope. Park relied on her husband's kindness, and together they built a family, raising 4 beautiful children. For a time they were content, even as they faced financial difficulties. But as we all know, life often throws unexpected challenges our way. Though her husband was kind, he wasn't a man with specialized skills, which meant they struggled to make ends meet. Many days there was barely enough food to put on the table for their children. As a means of survival, her husband, like many Korean men at the time, made the painful decision to leave for Saudi Arabia, where work on overseas construction projects was available. It was a hard choice, but one born out of necessity. 2 were the years when countless Korean men left their homes, their wives and their children, hoping that the wages earned on foreign soil would be enough to give their families a better life back home. It was a time filled with sacrifice and long stretches of separation. But not long into his time in Saudi Arabia, tragedy struck. Less than a year after leaving for the Middle East, her husband, while carrying heavy bricks at a construction site, slipped and fell down a flight of stairs. The fall was devastating. He severely injured his hands and, as a result, was no longer able to work. He was never the same after that accident. But can you imagine the shock and heartbreak that must have washed over Grandmother Park upon hearing this news? Her husband, the man she had leaned on for support, was now incapacitated. The weight of her world must have felt like it was crashing down around her. Not only was she a mother of 4 young children, but now she was also forced to become the sole provider for her family. And here's the thing: she had never earned money before. Her entire life up until that point had been devoted to raising her children and keeping their home together. Now, with her husband's accident, she had no choice but to take on the role of breadwinner, without any preparation for such a responsibility. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. There was no time for tears, no time for self-pity. She had no one to lean on, nowhere to retreat. She simply had to move forward for the sake of her children. And move forward she did, During the farming season, she would wake up before dawn to make noodles, which she sold to provide breakfast for her family. In the harsh, freezing winters, she sold cabbage at the local market, braving the bitter cold for hours on end. There were times when she worked as a maid in the homes of others, performing exhausting tasks for very little pay. She poured every ounce of her energy into these jobs, pushing her body to its absolute limits, just to ensure her children had enough to eat. It pains me to even imagine the amount of hardship and suffering Grandmother Park endured. But through it all, one thing remained constant: her love for her family. It was this love that gave her the strength to keep going, even when her body was weary and her spirit was low. Her eldest daughter, wise beyond her years, understood the depth of her mother's sacrifices. This eldest daughter was smart and had dreams of her own. She had the academic capability to enter a prestigious humanities high school, a rare opportunity for someone from an economic background. But the financial strain on the family was just too great. Instead of pursuing her dreams, she made the heart-wrenching decision to give them up, choosing to work in a textile factory during the day while attending high school classes at night. I can only imagine how much this decision must have weighed on her heart. She could have taken the opportunity to study at the high school she'd worked so hard to qualify for. She could have followed her path, perhaps creating a brighter future for herself. But instead, she chose to sacrifice her dreams for the sake of her family. "Mom, it's okay," she told Grandmother Park. "The family is struggling. I can't go to a humanities high school while everyone else is suffering. My goal is to earn money and make sure our second son can go to college." Grandmother Park's heart must have shattered upon hearing these words. How could a mother not feel the weight of her child's sacrifice? The dreams her daughter was giving up were the dreams any parent would want their child to pursue. But the reality of their situation left no room for such luxuries. Mother and daughter held each other close, their tears mingling in a shared grief, both knowing what was being lost. From that day on, the eldest daughter worked tirelessly to support her siblings, helping build the foundation for their future one painstaking step at a time. This decision was not easy for the eldest daughter, and I often wonder how many times she must have questioned it, lying awake at night, thinking of what could have been. Yet, despite the hardships, she never allowed herself to regret her choice. To her, something far more important was at stake. She didn't want her younger siblings to give up their dreams as she had done. She wanted them to be able to go to school, to have the opportunities she had missed. Even after grueling shifts at the textile factory, she stayed up late into the night, helping her siblings with their studies. She poured her love and hopes into them, wanting them to succeed where she could not. As Grandmother Park watched her eldest daughter's tireless dedication, her heart swelled with both regret and gratitude. She wished she could have done more for her daughter. But she also knew that without the selflessness, the family would have crumbled. "I'm so sorry," she would whisper to her daughter. "I'm sorry I made you suffer because of your poor mother." And her daughter would reply, always quietly and with a gentle smile, "No, Mom. At least I was able to help my younger siblings. That's enough for me." Because of the eldest daughter's sacrifices, Grandmother Park was able to send her other 3 children to college. Bit by bit, with the relentless effort of her daughter and her hard work, the family began to find some stability. The children grew, found jobs, and started their paths in life. Together, they set up a small shop, and for the first time in years, Grandmother Park was able to feel a sense of relief. Her family was finally on more solid ground. But the world, as it so often does, threw yet another cruel twist her way. Shortly after they had secured a home and found a semblance of peace, tragedy struck once again. For the eldest daughter, the very backbone of the family, was taken from them in a sudden accident. The loss devastated Grandmother Park. It was a sorrow deeper than words can express. She had already lost so much, but to lose the child who had sacrificed everything for the family, it was a blow that no mother should ever have to endure. And as if that wasn't enough, not long after, her husband passed away as well. The world seemed unbearably cruel. The time, as it always does, moved on. Grandmother Park's remaining children married and started their own families, and she was blessed to see her grandchildren grow. Despite all the loss, she could look at her family and know she had done everything she could for them. She had raised her children through long, hard years, through unimaginable difficulties. But even as she looked toward the future, part of her longed for rest, just a little peace after a lifetime of struggle. As we reflect on this incredible story, it's essential to remember that while loneliness and loss are an inevitable part of life, they do not have to define us. Grandmother Park's life was filled with hardship, yes, but also with deep love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. And in the end, those are the things that truly matter. But sadly, that was not the end of Grandmother Park's troubles. Life, which he had thought would finally grant her some peace, only continued to hurl more challenges her way. As the economy worsened, her children's circumstances became more difficult. And one by one, they began turning to her, not for comfort or support in the way one might hope, but for money. Despite all that grandmother had sacrificed for them over the years, despite her lifelong devotion, her children saw her as a source of financial rescue. Grandmother Park didn't have much left, just her modest house, the life insurance money from her late husband, and a single plot of land that had been in their family for years. But to her children, even this modest inheritance seemed like a treasure trove, something they believed they had a right to. The demands began innocently enough, but soon grew incessant. Her children, ever aware of the growing value of the land, thanks to a newly built subway line nearby, started pushing for more. Grandmother couldn't bear to see her children struggle, and in her heart of hearts, she believed she could ease their burdens. So even though this land was one of the last pieces of security she had, she made the difficult decision to sell it. She sold the plot of land and distributed the money among her children, thinking this would bring them some stability and perhaps a little gratitude. But as fate would have it, this was just the beginning of her heartbreak. After selling the land, all Grandmother Park had left was her house filled with memories of her husband and children, a place where she had raised them, a place that had withstood the test of time. She hoped that this would be enough to secure her future, to give her some comfort in her remaining years. But her children, ever unsatisfied, did not stop there. They began to hint, sometimes subtly, sometimes not, that perhaps it was time for her to downsize. "Mom, wouldn't it be easier for you to live in a smaller house?" "You don't need all this space," they would say, trying to mask their intentions with feigned concern. "And think about how much easier life could be if you had some extra money." And again, grandmother, torn between her love for her children and the gnawing sense that she was being taken advantage of, gave in. She sold her beloved home and moved into a smaller one, hoping that this sacrifice would finally bring her children peace in herself, a chance at tranquility. But as you might have guessed, this was not to be. Even after selling her house and giving the remaining money to her children, they returned once again, their eyes now set on the last thing she had, her very home. They began to pressure her to sell her small house and move into a nursing home. They framed it as concern for her well-being, cloaking their greed in sweet words of care. "Mom, we're worried about you living all alone at your age," they would say. "What if something happens to you? What if you fall or get sick and there's no one to help?" Her eldest child, in particular, was insistent. "Mom, you've sacrificed so much for us. It's time for you to relax. Move into a nursing home where you can be surrounded by friends, where you won't be lonely." The words sounded caring on the surface, but beneath them, grandmother could sense the truth. Her children were not worried about her safety or her comfort. They were only thinking about the money they could make from selling her house. The more they pushed, the more obvious their real intentions became. "This house's value is unpredictable now," they said. "It's better to sell it while the price is high. You don't need it anymore, and we can be at ease knowing you're in a place where people can take care of you." The children, who grandmother had dedicated her entire life to, now seemed like strangers to her. Their constant hints, their false smiles, their thinly veiled demands, it was as if they had forgotten everything she had done for them. They didn't see her as their mother anymore, but as a source of money. Grandmother Park was at a loss for words. All those years of devotion, all the sacrifices she had made, now seemed meaningless. She had given her life to raise her children, to protect them, to nurture them, and now they were repaying her kindness with selfishness and cold hearts. And her mind drifted back to her eldest daughter, the one who had sacrificed everything to keep the family afloat, the one who had worked day and night, giving up her dreams to make sure her siblings had a chance at a better life. But she was gone now, taken too soon in a tragic accident. Grandmother Park wept for her lost daughter, for the child who would never have treated her this way, and for the cruel reality that she was now facing. As she lay in bed at night, tears streaming down her face, she couldn't help but wonder where it had all gone wrong. Her sons, who had once been her pride and joy, now seemed indifferent to her pain, concerned only with their own families and financial needs. "I don't care about you, Mom," one of her sons had said in a moment of cruel honesty, and those words cut deeper than any physical wound. It was as if the bond they once shared had withered and died, leaving only coldness and resentment in its place. Grandmother Park's heart grew colder with each passing day. The love she once felt for her children was now overshadowed by the pain of their betrayal. Despite everything, Grandmother Park had believed that, while she might not have been able to give her children everything they wanted, she had devoted her life to them. She had done her best, sacrificed her happiness, and worked herself to the bone for their sake. Yet here she was, left with nothing but heartache and loneliness. Her children's attitudes caused her immense pain, and the realization that they were willing to abandon her for money was almost too much to bear. After much deliberation, Grandmother made a decision that would change her life forever. She could no longer live in a world where her children's greed dictated her every move. She refused to go to a nursing home and refused to sell the last remaining piece of security she had. Instead, she quietly moved to the countryside to live alone, away from the noise, the demands, and the heartbreak. At first, life alone was incredibly lonely. The silence was deafening, and the absence of her children, despite everything, was difficult to bear. Grandmother often felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness, the knowledge that she was truly on her own weighing heavily on her heart. But as time passed, something remarkable happened. She began to find peace in the solitude. Without her children's constant demands, without the bitterness and fighting over property, she realized how much simpler life could be. Although loneliness was still present, it no longer consumed her. She learned to accept it, to find comfort in the quiet. For the first time in many years, Grandmother Park began to live for herself. She no longer had to worry about others' opinions or cater to the needs of her grown children. Instead, she embraced the simplicity of her new life and fulfilled small wishes she had long neglected in the name of motherhood and sacrifice. Her journey had been long, painful, and full of heartache. But at last, Grandmother Park had found a sense of peace she had never thought possible amidst the chaos of her past. Even though her family had failed her, she had not failed herself, and in that she found the strength to carry on. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. My grandmother always believed, deep in her heart, that although she couldn't fulfill every wish or desire her children had, she devoted her entire existence to raising them with nothing but love, care, and sacrifice. And every waking moment of her life was filled with a sense of responsibility to ensure that her children were happy, safe, and had what they needed. She never hesitated to put her own needs aside to prioritize theirs, and in doing so, she gave them the best years of her life. There were times she went without, moments when she silently carried her burdens, so that her children could live free from worry. But as the years passed, something unexpected happened. Instead of gratitude or appreciation, she was met with coldness, indifference, and at times even disrespect from the very people she had poured her soul into raising. It was as if all the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, and the love she had given unconditionally had faded into the background of their lives, forgotten, as if none of it had ever existed. The pain of their disregard became unbearable for her. It wasn't just the feeling of being unappreciated, it was the realization that the connection she once thought was unbreakable had eroded. The very people she had nurtured and raised were now causing her more emotional anguish than she could have ever imagined. After a lifetime of giving, she found herself empty, with nothing left to offer. It was at this heart-wrenching moment that she understood she could no longer continue to support her grown children, especially when it seemed her efforts were not only unrecognized but unwanted. It was time for her to reclaim what little time she had left. The thought of spending her remaining years enduring more of this emotional turmoil was too much for her to bear. She had spent enough of her life catering to the needs and desires of others, and now, in her twilight years, she deserved peace. After many long and difficult nights spent in quiet reflection, she made one of the hardest decisions of her life, to let go of the life she had with her children. It wasn't a decision made lightly. It was the culmination of years of pain, neglect, and a growing realization that she needed to prioritize her well-being. For years, her children had suggested moving her into a nursing home, a place she feared would strip her of her independence and dignity. She refused to be put away in a place that felt more like a waiting room for death than a home. Instead, she chose to move to the countryside, far away from the noise and chaos of the city, and start anew, living the remainder of her life on her terms, even if it meant doing so in solitude. At first, the quiet was overwhelming. Loneliness wrapped around her like a thick fog, and the emptiness of the small house she moved into echoed with the absence of the family she once had. Every room felt too big, too quiet. She had spent her entire life surrounded by people, children needing her, family relying on her, and now, for the first time, she was completely and utterly alone. The silence was deafening, and she often found herself troubled by the fact that there was no one to talk to, no one to share her day with. Meals were eaten in solitude, with only her thoughts to keep her company. Nights were long, and sleep was often elusive, as her mind replayed memories of the past, both the good and the bad. But as time went on, something shifted. She began to reflect more deeply on her life, and in doing so, she realized that her solitude, while painful, was also a kind of freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't burdened by the constant fighting between her children, the endless squabbles over property and inheritance, the bitterness that had driven a wedge between them. She no longer had to bear witness to their arguments or feel the sting of their harsh words. In the quiet of the countryside, she found a peace she hadn't known in years. Yes, there were moments when the loneliness was almost unbearable, but as she thought back to the toxic environment she had left behind, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. There was no longer any need to walk on eggshells or worry about pleasing others. She was free to live as she pleased, without the weight of anyone else's expectations or demands. Though loneliness remained her constant companion, she learned to embrace it, to accept it as part of her journey. It wasn't easy, but over time she began to see her solitude not as a curse, but as a blessing in disguise. She started to fill her days with simple pleasures, taking long walks in the countryside, tending to a small garden, reading books she had never had time for. These were things she had always dreamed of doing, but had never been able to do because her life had been consumed by the needs of her family. Now, in her later years, she finally had the time and space to focus on herself. Slowly but surely, she began to fulfill the small, personal wishes she had long set aside in favor of her children. And in doing so, she began to craft a peaceful old age for herself. Life has a strange way of bringing loneliness into our lives, often when we least expect it. Even in the happiest of times, loneliness can suddenly creep in, uninvited, and take root in our hearts. It makes everything feel a little emptier, a little less joyful, and it's often hard to put into words. The weight of that loneliness can be suffocating, making it difficult to breathe, as if the world is closing in around you. In those moments, we long to reach out, to connect with someone, anyone, who might understand what we're going through. But as we grow older, those opportunities become rarer. The people we once relied on drift away, and finding new connections becomes harder and harder. Even if we have friends or family we trust deeply, there's always that nagging fear that reaching out might burden them. So we keep our loneliness inside, hidden from the world, convincing ourselves that no one else can understand the depth of our pain. We tell ourselves that our loneliness is the greatest, the heaviest burden to bear. But in reality, loneliness is a universal experience. Somewhere, someone else might be feeling an even deeper loneliness than we are. They might be enduring a sadness that we can't even begin to comprehend. Conversely, someone else might feel less lonely but be trapped in a darker, more suffocating sadness. The truth is that loneliness is a deeply personal experience, one that no one else can fully understand. No matter how much we try to rely on others, no one can truly know the depths of the loneliness we carry in our hearts. Not even our children, the ones we raised and loved, can fully grasp the weight of our loneliness. And so, maybe the answer isn't in seeking connection with others, but in learning to embrace solitude. Maybe as we age, there's wisdom in stepping back from the noisy, chaotic world and finding peace within ourselves. Solitude offers a kind of freedom that we can't find when we're constantly surrounded by others. It allows us to strip away the expectations, the pressures, and the noise, and focus on what truly matters to us. In solitude, we can comfort ourselves, find peace in our hearts, and learn to enjoy the simple pleasures of life that we so often overlook. It's in these moments of solitude that we can finally breathe, finally relax, and finally find the inner peace we've been searching for. As we grow older, there are countless reasons why embracing solitude can be a gift. Here are 5 reasons why, in our later years, we should learn to become more solitary. First, if you don't know how to live alone, you end up bothering those around you. If you don't know how to embrace living alone, you inevitably burden those around you. It's a harsh truth, but one that many people realize only after they've imposed their emotional needs on others. When asked what worries them most as they age, men typically mention loneliness, while women express concerns over financial stability. These worries, whether about loneliness or livelihood, are natural for everyone. However, the fear of being alone is particularly profound. Many people dread solitude so much that, in their desperation to escape it, they cling to people they shouldn't be close to, forming unhealthy attachments and becoming overly dependent. In their attempt to avoid facing loneliness head-on, they unknowingly create complicated, strained relationships that cause even greater pain. What begins as a fear of loneliness evolves into a web of tangled connections that weigh them down emotionally, making life harder for both themselves and those they rely on. This avoidance of loneliness doesn't just create external problems, it weakens you from the inside. The more you try to out loneliness, the more isolated and vulnerable you become. Why? Because instead of facing the fear that lives within you, you attempt to solve it by leaning on others, expecting them to fill the void. This dependency doesn't resolve the root of the issue. It only deepens your feelings of isolation. You end up being swayed by others' opinions and desires rather than learning to stand strong on your own. Many people say that maintaining human relationships is one of the hardest aspects of life, and it's not hard to see why. The complexities of emotions, expectations, and misunderstandings make it a challenge that people of all ages and backgrounds struggle with. And yet, a considerable number of these relational difficulties stem from a person's inability to be alone. It's as though human misfortune is born from this lack of comfort with solitude. And when people can't endure loneliness, they become swept up in relationships, tethered to others by their need for companionship, validation, or distraction. They end up living by the standards of others, losing themselves in the process. And the irony is that the more they try to escape loneliness, the more isolated they feel within. They become emotionally fragile, upset by the smallest disruptions, and obsessed with others' opinions or actions. However, those who learn to embrace solitude can stand strong in their relationships, appearing calm, composed, and even indifferent to the dramas that might consume others. Choosing solitude doesn't mean rejecting people or isolating yourself from the world. Rather, it means finding the strength to be alone and still feel content, to cherish your own company without needing constant validation or connection from others. Solitude in its purest form is an empowering choice. While loneliness is the pain of being alone, solitude is the joy of it. Loneliness comes uninvited, but solitude is something we actively choose. The reason many of us struggle so much with loneliness is that we've forgotten how to enjoy solitude. If we could reconnect with that ability to be content on our own, we wouldn't feel so lost or burdened by the absence of others. Developing the ability to be alone not only helps us maintain healthier relationships, but also gives us the power to take control of our lives. Solitude allows for reflection, growth, for deep thought. It's not about cutting yourself off from the world, but about learning to enjoy your own company, to think deeply, and to use your alone time wisely. It's about learning to let go of the attachments that weigh us down. Just as nothing in life lasts forever, it's important to understand that relationships, too, can come and go. Trying to cling too tightly to them only brings suffering. Some relationships naturally end quickly, while others may last a lifetime without any forced effort. This ebb and flow is the natural order of life. If you hold on too stubbornly, or if you approach relationships with a bad temper or rigid expectations, you risk deepening the rifts between you and others. Over time, you may find yourself alone, not because you wanted solitude, but because you pushed others away through your behavior. It's also important to recognize that if you don't make an effort to improve your situation and simply expect others to take care of you, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. No one can carry the burden of your loneliness for you, not in a lasting, meaningful way. If you have a spiritual faith, drawing strength from that can help you find inner peace. Many people find solace in their religion, which offers a deep reservoir of inner strength to cope with life's challenges. Alternatively, having a pet can alleviate the sting of loneliness, providing companionship without the complexities of human relationships. Maintaining a consistent hobby is another way to fill your life with joy and purpose. A hobby gives you something to look forward to, something that brings you fulfillment that doesn't depend on anyone else. It's a beautiful way to connect with yourself and your passions. In addition, participating in volunteer activities not only connects you to others, but also allows you to contribute meaningfully to society. Through volunteering, you build new, genuine relationships that aren't based on need but on shared purpose. In this way, learning to live independently and with confidence can greatly improve your quality of life. There is so much that you can do for yourself, so much joy to be found in self-sufficiency. Yes, loneliness can be painful, but it's also an opportunity for growth, introspection, and discovering the strength within yourself. Overcome the fear of being alone by building a life that you love on your terms. Rather than seeing solitude as something to fear, embrace it as a chance to reconnect with who you truly are and what you truly want. The ability to be alone doesn't mean shutting others out, but rather creating a life where you are happy, fulfilled, and empowered, whether you are surrounded by people or standing strong on your own. With that mindset, you can live a life that is not just progressive, but deeply rewarding. Second, you need to know how to be alone to build good human relationships. What do you consider to be the most important thing in life? For many of us, the immediate answer might be human relationships, family, friends, partners, those bonds that connect us to the world. Indeed, countless studies and researchers around the globe have pointed out that happiness often stems from our relationships with others. It's true, there's an undeniable warmth and connection in sharing our lives with people we care about. But as you grow older, you may come to realize something quite profound. Clinging to relationships isn't always the key to happiness. Trying to force relationships, especially those that no longer serve you, can sow the seeds of unhappiness. Think about it. How many times have you felt drained, stressed, or even resentful because of a relationship? Whether it's with a friend, a colleague, or even a family member, not all relationships bring joy or fulfillment. Instead, they can become a source of constant frustration, where you expend your precious energy trying to maintain connections that are no longer healthy or meaningful. This is why, as you age, it's crucial to develop the courage to be alone, not out of bitterness or isolation, but for your peace of mind and happiness. The fear of being alone is natural. It's something almost everyone experiences at one point or another. But if you constantly rely on others to fill that void, you risk being swayed, manipulated, or even emotionally drained by those who don't have your best interests at heart. On the other hand, those who master the art of solitude, who can spend time alone without feeling lost or empty, are the ones who truly know how to thrive. They've learned to enjoy their own company, to find peace in moments of quiet, and to reflect on their inner selves. This doesn't mean they reject human relationships, but rather that they approach them from a place of strength, not neediness. When you no longer rely on others to fill your emotional gaps, you can engage with them more authentically, without the pressure of seeking validation or companionship to avoid loneliness. Let's take a moment to reflect on the true meaning of maturity. If we turn to the dictionary, we find that a mature person is someone whose body and mind are fully developed, someone who fulfills their obligations and responsibilities, all while exercising the freedom to make their own choices. But what does that mean? At its core, maturity is about embracing your independence physically, emotionally, and mentally. It's about recognizing that while human relationships can enhance our lives, they do not define us. A mature person understands that true happiness must be cultivated from within. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. This doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world or cutting ties with people, but rather learning to navigate life on your terms. When you embrace solitude, you give yourself the space to grow, to explore your thoughts, desires, and dreams without the noise of others' expectations or opinions. Solitude becomes a powerful tool for self-discovery. It allows you to nurture the most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. Moreover, by being comfortable alone, you are better equipped to form healthy, balanced relationships with others. When you aren't driven by a fear of loneliness or a need to please others. Instead, you can enter relationships as a whole, fulfilled person who values the connection, but doesn't depend on it for happiness. This shift in perspective is liberating. It frees you from the emotional roller coaster of depending on others for your sense of self-worth and allows you to set boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. The more time you spend alone, the more you come to realize that solitude is not a prison, it's a sanctuary. It's a space where you can recharge, reflect, and become more attuned to your own needs. It's in these moments of solitude that you can evaluate your relationships more clearly without the haze of emotional dependency. Are these relationships enriching your life, or are they draining your energy? Are they rooted in mutual respect, or are they based on fear of being alone? Solitude provides the clarity to answer these questions honestly. As an adult, if you face your fears and actively work to shape your life, you can build a truly happy existence. It takes courage to confront the fear of being alone, to silence the inner voice that tells you solitude equals loneliness. When you overcome that fear, you unlock a new level of freedom to choose the people you want in your life. Freedom to walk away from toxic or unfulfilling relationships. And most importantly, freedom to be content with yourself. The ability to be alone is not a sign of isolation, but of strength. It shows that you are capable of meeting your own needs and of finding joy and contentment within yourself. When you approach relationships from this place of strength, they become more meaningful and more genuine because they are no longer based on fear or dependency. They become connections of mutual respect where both people can thrive as individuals and as a part of a greater whole. So what is the most important thing in life? Perhaps it is human relationships, but not in the way we traditionally think of them. The most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. Learn to be alone, not as an escape, but as a way to build a stronger foundation for your life and your relationships with others. Only by embracing solitude can you truly understand the depth of your strength, your happiness, and your potential. Once you master that, all other relationships will flourish naturally, without force, without fear, and without the need to cling to them for validation. True happiness begins with you. Third, you must cherish the people around you. It's easy to feel warmth and tenderness for those who visit your life occasionally, like a distant friend or a relative who drops by every so often. Their absence makes the heart grow fonder, and their presence fills you with a sense of nostalgia and longing. But the people who live with you every single day, your spouse, your children, or even close friends, often become so familiar that, over time, you may start to focus more on their flaws. And the little habits that once seemed endearing can start to annoy you, and conflicts can easily arise. In these moments, you may find yourself speaking harshly, showing frustration or even dislike. It's so easy to forget the value of those who are always around, simply because they are there, day in and day out. But have you stopped to think about how your words and actions may be hurting them? Are you perhaps speaking rudely to the very people who matter most to you? Are you neglecting them, taking their presence for granted, or treating them carelessly because you assume they'll always be there? This kind of behavior, whether intentional or not, can cause immense pain on both sides. The people who love you, who are there for you day after day, may not say anything at first, but your carelessness can chip away at their hearts, slowly creating a distance between you that you might not even notice until it's too late. There's an old proverb that says, a single word can drive people apart, and it's so true. Words have an incredible power, more than we often realize. A thoughtless comment, a careless remark made in a moment of frustration can linger in someone's heart for years. It can create rifts in relationships that might take a lifetime to heal. The importance of speaking carefully, of choosing your words with kindness and wisdom, only grows as we age. The older we get, the more we should understand the impact our words have on the people we love. As you grow older, it's easy to get set in your ways, to become less patient, and to speak more bluntly without thinking of the consequences. But it's precisely because of this that you must be more mindful. You must avoid making the mistake of saying hurtful things to the people you hold dear. Take a breath, reflect before you speak, and make an effort to speak kindly, warmly, and with the understanding that words can either build or break relationships. Kindness doesn't cost anything, but it has the power to strengthen bonds, heal wounds, and bring people closer together. The more care and consideration you put into your words, the more respect and love you will receive in return. It's also important to avoid comparing the people in your life to others or forcing your expectations onto them. Everyone has their path and their journey, and trying to mold someone into what you think they should be only creates tension. Instead, strive to be a person with a broad mind, someone who can accept and appreciate the people around them for who they are, not who you think they should be. By doing this, you will earn not only the respect of those around you, but also their love and loyalty. People gravitate towards those who make them feel accepted and valued for who they truly are, and by being that person, you will never lose the ones who matter most. Too often, we only come to realize the true value of the people in our lives after it's too late. We take them for granted when they are here, focusing on their imperfections or the small conflicts that arise, only to regret our actions deeply when they are no longer with us. This is a tragic pattern that repeats itself throughout life, whether it's a spouse, a parent, or a close friend. How many times have we heard people say, after losing someone, "I wish I had treated them better. I wish I had shown them how much they meant to me." The sorrow of realizing you didn't appreciate someone enough until they're gone is one of the heaviest burdens to carry. And don't let that happen to you. Don't wait until it's too late to value the people around you. Your spouse, your family, your loved ones, they are the treasures of your life, not obstacles to be dealt with or problems to be solved. They are the ones who have shared in your joys and sorrows, and who have stood by you through the ups and downs. Treat them with the care and love they deserve every single day. Remind yourself often of their importance in your life. It's so easy to get caught up in the routine, in the mundane daily tasks, and forget to express your appreciation. But a simple gesture of kindness, a few thoughtful words, can make all the difference. Imagine how much richer your relationships could be if you made a habit of cherishing the people you love, of treating them with tenderness and respect. Imagine how much regret you could avoid if you lived every day as though it were your last chance to show those around you how much they mean to you. Life is fragile, and we never know how much time we have with the people we care about. By making the effort to cherish them now, you ensure that you won't be left with the aching regret of what could have been later. In the end, it's not grand gestures or expensive gifts that keep relationships strong. It's the small, everyday acts of love and kindness. It's the words you choose, the tone of your voice, the patience you show. These are the things that leave a lasting impact. So, take a moment to reflect on how you treat the people who are closest to you. You're speaking to them with kindness. Are you treating them with the respect and love they deserve? And if not, it's never too late to start. Every day is a new opportunity to cherish the people in your life and to ensure that you never have to live with the pain of regret. Fourth, only when you can accept yourself can you truly accept others. When someone opens up to you, confiding in you with their deepest feelings and vulnerabilities, it's an incredible act of trust. It's not something they would do with just anyone they do it, because they sense that you're the kind of person who can understand, who can listen without judgment. But this ability to be a safe space for others doesn't come from nowhere. It stems from something much deeper within you, the ability to accept yourself first. When you've learned to embrace all the parts of who you are, the good, the bad, the strengths, and the flaws, you naturally create a sense of inner peace. This calm, self-assured presence invites others to be open and to feel safe in sharing their thoughts and emotions. It's a reflection of maturity, that state of being where you no longer feel the need to hide who you are or pretend to be something you're not. That when you accept yourself fully and without reservation, you are no longer driven by insecurity or the fear of being judged. This allows you to empathize more deeply with others, to truly hear and understand them without projecting your fears or judgments onto their experiences. It's as though your inner calm becomes a mirror for others, showing them that it's okay to be vulnerable, to be themselves without fear of rejection. Having someone who trusts you and who values your presence enough to confide in you is one of life's greatest gifts. It's a sign that you've built something meaningful in your relationships. It makes you someone who can maintain a strong center in human interactions. You're not easily thrown off course by the ups and downs of life because your foundation is solid, rooted in self-acceptance and self-understanding. And when you're secure in yourself, that's when you can truly be comfortable and happy in your relationships with others. One of the most beautiful aspects of self-acceptance is that it allows you to move through life without feeling rushed or pressured. There is no frantic need to prove yourself to others or achieve things by a certain deadline because you've already found peace within yourself. You understand that life is a journey, not a race, and that true growth takes time. The mindset of believing you can change, of knowing that you can evolve and improve, makes all the difference. It's this belief in your capacity for growth that leads to real transformation. But here's the key: it's important to never give up on yourself. Even when the path ahead seems unclear, when progress feels slow, it's crucial to keep going. Take your time, reflect on where you are and where you want to be, and ask yourself the important questions. Who are you now? Who do you want to become? What do you need to change to get there? The answers may not come overnight, but that's okay. By consistently asking yourself these questions and making small, deliberate efforts to improve, you will eventually achieve the goals you set for yourself. Self-acceptance doesn't mean complacency. It's not about settling for who you are at this moment and deciding that no further change is necessary. Rather, it's about recognizing your worth as you are right now, while still striving to become the best version of yourself. It's about balancing contentment with a desire for growth. When you can look at yourself and say, "I am enough, and I can become even better," you create a space for genuine, lasting change. And this process of self-acceptance and self-improvement isn't just about you. It's about how you relate to others. The more you grow, the more you can offer in your relationships. When you've done the inner work, when you've faced your insecurities and come to terms with your flaws, you no longer feel the need to criticize or judge others for theirs. You can accept others in all their complexity, just as you've learned to accept yourself. In this way, self-acceptance becomes the foundation for all meaningful human connections. When you accept yourself, you're not constantly seeking approval or validation from others. You're not afraid of being vulnerable or showing your true self. And this creates an atmosphere of trust where others feel safe to do the same. It's through this mutual acceptance that the deepest, most fulfilling relationships are built. So, as you continue on your journey, remember that self-acceptance is not a destination but a practice. It's something you cultivate every day through patience, reflection, and effort. As you grow in your ability to accept yourself, you will find that your relationships with others naturally improve as well. You'll attract people who appreciate you for who you truly are, and you'll be able to accept them in return, not as perfect beings, but as beautifully imperfect individuals, just like yourself. In the end, the journey to self-acceptance is also a journey toward a more compassionate, understanding, and fulfilling life. When you accept yourself, you unlock the ability to accept others fully, without judgment, and this creates deeper, more meaningful connections. By continuing to believe in your ability to grow and change, you not only transform your own life, but also positively impact the lives of those around you. Fifth, live a life that does not stop learning and challenging yourself. It's essential to approach unfamiliar and new things with a friendly and open attitude. Research has consistently shown that people who embody friendliness and openness tend to live happier and healthier lives. But what exactly do these qualities mean? Friendliness is more than just being nice. It's the genuine desire to get along with others, to be considerate of their feelings, and to cultivate harmonious relationships. It's about extending warmth and kindness, even to those you might not know well. When you're friendly, you create an environment where others feel welcome and appreciated, and this sense of connection leads to greater happiness and contentment. Openness, on the other hand, is about having an open mind, especially when it comes to embracing new experiences, ideas, and challenges. People with high openness are often blessed with a rich imagination and an insatiable curiosity about the world around them. They're not afraid to step outside of their comfort zones, to explore the unknown, and to question the way things are. This mindset of openness not only fuels personal growth, but also makes life more exciting and fulfilling. The more open you are to new relationships, new hobbies, and new experiences, the happier you will be. Engaging in new activities, trying out hobbies you've always wanted to pursue, or challenging yourself with something unfamiliar can bring an incredible sense of vitality to your life. It breathes fresh energy into your routine and can help you rediscover passions you may have forgotten or pushed aside. It's this willingness to try new things that keeps you feeling alive and young at heart. Curiosity itself is often referred to as the source of vitality. The more curious you are, the more alive you feel, because curiosity drives you to explore, to learn, and to grow. Without it, life can start to feel stagnant, and a lack of curiosity is often seen as the first step toward aging, both physically and mentally. And there's a popular saying that goes, once a person loses their curiosity, they begin to age. And it holds a profound truth. Curiosity keeps your mind sharp and your heart open. It gives you a reason to look forward to each day, as there's always something new to discover, something fresh to learn. So if you make good use of your alone time to pursue the things you've always wanted to do, to fill in the gaps in your life, and to tackle those projects or goals you've been putting off, you'll find yourself living a much richer and happier life. Your time alone can become a period of deep reflection, creativity, and personal development, allowing you to emerge from it with a renewed sense of purpose. And never stop learning. No matter how old you get, or how much you think you already know, there's always something new to discover. Learning doesn't just fill your mind with knowledge, it fills your soul with joy. It's one of the few things in life that can continually bring happiness, regardless of your circumstances. Whether it's learning a new skill, diving into a subject you've always been curious about, or simply picking up a new hobby, the act of learning brings a sense of achievement that can be incredibly fulfilling. Each day, as you experience small victories, mastering something new, overcoming a challenge, or simply making progress on a long-term goal, you'll gain a renewed sense of vitality. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. There's magic in the process of learning that can completely transform your outlook on life. When you're constantly growing, evolving, and expanding your understanding of the world, life never feels dull. Each new piece of knowledge and each skill you acquire gives you a deeper appreciation for the world around you and a greater confidence in yourself. It's these small, daily achievements that keep your spirit alive and give you the energy to face whatever challenges life may throw your way. So embrace the unfamiliar. Be open to the new. Cultivate a friendly attitude toward both the people and experiences that come into your life, and allow yourself to be curious again, like a child exploring the world for the first time. In doing so, you'll not only build inner strength and resilience, but you'll also create a life that is full of joy, vitality, and endless possibilities. Life is an adventure, and there's always something new just around the corner. You just have to be willing to look for it. Next, 3 secrets to living alone happily until death. First, true sociability shines after retirement. Throughout our working years, we are often preoccupied with the size of our social circle or the pressure to maintain numerous relationships, many of which are driven by work-related matters. This constant stress can lead to a fear of becoming isolated once we retire, as the professional environment that once dictated our social interactions disappears. However, there's a beautiful shift that happens in human relationships after retirement, a shift to a completely different dimension. The social life you experience after retiring is no longer bound by the obligations and pressures that once shaped your interactions in the workplace. It becomes centered around the people you genuinely like, those you choose to spend your time with, rather than those you had to interact with out of necessity. While working, we often find ourselves engaging with people we may not particularly like or relate to, simply because we have to weather for professional interests, tasks, or responsibilities. These relationships may have been vital to advancing in our careers, but they were often forged out of necessity rather than personal connection. After retirement, however, you no longer have to meet people for work-related reasons or deal with stressful dynamics that might have dominated your professional life. If someone doesn't bring you joy or makes you uncomfortable, you can choose not to engage with them. This freedom allows for a more authentic approach to building connections, as your relationships are now based solely on mutual enjoyment and shared interests. Interestingly, many people mistakenly believe that, because they met countless individuals during their working life, their social skills must be highly developed. They think that the volume of workplace relationships reflects a high level of sociability. In reality, however, many of those connections were formed to navigate the workplace, often out of survival rather than genuine connection. These relationships formed out of necessity frequently fade after retirement. Colleagues, supervisors, and professional contacts who seemed close during your working years might slowly drift away as the common ground you once shared dissolves. Once you let go of the titles, badges, and roles that define your professional identity, it can be surprisingly challenging to form new relationships. But here's where the real beauty lies. Post-retirement relationships provide the opportunity for true sociability to emerge. With the passing of those work-driven relationships, you're left with the space and time to build connections that are rooted in sincerity. Now you can focus on forming friendships based on genuine interest, shared hobbies, and personal values. Whether it's joining a local club, taking up new activities, or rediscovering old passions, retirement opens the door to creating meaningful relationships with people who share your interests. These friendships are built on mutual enjoyment and personal connection, not on the external pressures of work. Moreover, retirement offers a chance to nurture warm family ties that may have been neglected during your busy working years. The demands of work can often cause us to push aside important relationships with family and loved ones. Perhaps you didn't have the time to regularly connect with your spouse, children, or close friends because you were too exhausted or overwhelmed by the obligations of your career. Retirement presents the perfect opportunity to restore these bonds and to invest time and care into the relationships that truly matter. You can now give your full attention to your loved ones, strengthening those connections and deepening your sense of fulfillment. This is the time to reconnect with people who bring joy into your life and to let go of relationships that were built on professional convenience rather than true compatibility. It's a moment to prioritize what and who makes you happy, without the distractions or obligations of a career to dictate your interactions. After retirement, relationships take on a more authentic quality because they are built from a place of choice rather than necessity. And if you find that many of your former colleagues or acquaintances fade away after retirement, don't be discouraged. This is natural. Those relationships served their purpose during your working years, but now you have the freedom to form new, meaningful connections that can enrich your life. It's also important to remember that socializing after retirement doesn't have to be about quantity, but about quality. A few deep, fulfilling relationships will bring you far more joy and satisfaction than a large number of superficial connections. As you move into this new phase of life, embrace the opportunity to engage in hobbies or activities you've always wanted to try but never had time for. Whether it's traveling, learning a new skill, volunteering, or simply spending more time with family, these experiences will help you form new friendships and deepen existing bonds. The relationships you build during retirement are likely to be more aligned with who you truly are because they are based on shared experiences, values, and interests. Retirement is not the end of your social life, but rather the beginning of a new chapter where true sociability can thrive. It's a time to cultivate meaningful relationships with people who bring out the best in you, and to focus on the connections that genuinely enrich your life. No longer constrained by professional obligations, you have the freedom to build the kind of social life that reflects your happiness, interests, and passions. If you've been neglecting certain relationships due to being busy and tired, now is the time to restore and develop them with care, ensuring that your post-retirement years are filled with warmth, companionship, and joy. Second, it's important not to become isolated. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that solitude equates to isolation or that living alone guarantees safety from the struggles of life. It's a common misconception that living alone as you age leads to a lonely and tragic end. When people hear phrases like perfect for a lonely death, they may mistakenly equate living alone with inevitable isolation and sadness. But to believe that is to misunderstand the true essence of life and what it means to live independently. Life itself is a journey that begins alone and ends alone. We enter this world by ourselves, and we will one day leave it the same way. Living and dying alone is part of the natural course of life, whether we are surrounded by people or not. To even those who claim they need no one, whether it's their children, spouse, or friends, and insist that life should be lived independently, often secretly fear dying alone. This fear can distort the understanding of what it truly means to live alone. The idea of living alone is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean cutting off all social relationships, retreating into isolation, or locking yourself away from the world. In modern society, single-person households have become more common, not because people have trouble forming relationships or suffer from personality issues, but because they are choosing to live a life that offers more freedom and independence. Living alone can be a conscious choice, made by those who value their autonomy and want the flexibility to live on their terms. And this isn't about avoiding human connection, but rather about embracing life in a way that feels authentic and fulfilling. But living alone happily and without the fear of a lonely death requires effort. It's about striking a balance between independence and staying connected to others. You must remain engaged with the world, which means attending gatherings, meeting friends regularly, and staying in touch with social networks, such as social workers or community organizations. The fear of being lonely can't be resolved by cutting yourself off from everyone. The opposite is true. People who can live well on their own are often the ones who are also good at maintaining relationships with others. They understand the importance of balancing solitude with social connection. It's important to recognize that living alone doesn't mean you should ignore the need for care, especially as you age. If you find yourself unwell or in need of assistance, there is no shame in seeking support through home care or home nursing services. Having someone check in on you regularly, whether it's a caregiver, a social worker, or a home nurse, can make a world of difference. This not only ensures your well-being, but also helps you maintain the confidence that you're not truly alone. Moreover, nurturing relationships with friends, colleagues, and family can significantly reduce the fear of living and dying alone. Even if you live by yourself, you can still maintain a social network that supports you emotionally and practically. Having friends or close acquaintances with whom you check in every few days, children you speak to at least once a week, or social workers or caregivers who visit regularly can provide a sense of security and connectedness. These relationships serve as vital touchpoints, reminding you that, while you may live alone, you are not cut off from the world. Living alone, in the truest sense, can be a path to freedom, self-reflection, and personal growth. It offers an opportunity to live life on your terms, without the constant need for validation or approval from others. However, it doesn't mean isolating yourself from human connection or living in fear of loneliness. The key is to remain active in your social life, to foster relationships that matter, and to stay involved in your community. You can live alone and still experience deep, meaningful connections with others. In the end, living alone isn't about preparing for a lonely death. It's about living a rich, fulfilling life where you are both self-reliant and connected. The fear of loneliness or isolation can be conquered by staying engaged with others, seeking help when needed, and maintaining strong social bonds. By doing so, you can escape the fear of living alone and instead embrace it as a life filled with freedom, independence, and meaningful connections. Third, above all, you must prioritize your health. Many people, especially as they age, fear the idea of dying alone or worrying about what will happen if they develop conditions like dementia. But ironically, they often neglect the very thing that could prevent these worries: their health. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that having a family will be a safety net and that they will step in to take care of you when you need it most. Many even pity those who live alone, assuming they must be lonely or without support. However, living alone does not necessarily equate to having poor relationships with family. You can have a supportive family network even while maintaining independence. But the real danger lies in excessive worrying about becoming a burden to others, which can lead to emotional distress, depression, and even more significant health issues. It's natural to worry about being sick and needing care, but constantly fretting over how you might burden others can be even more paralyzing. Rather than getting stuck in that cycle of fear, it's far better to take proactive steps to improve your health. Simply getting outside for a walk, engaging in regular physical activity, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle can go a long way in alleviating fears of both physical and emotional dependence. Far too often, we hear people say they want to live a short, intense life, avoiding the gradual decline of aging. Ironically, it's those very people who often end up living long lives, suffering from chronic illnesses that drain not only their vitality, but also the energy of those around them. If you're genuinely afraid of a lonely death or developing dementia, the best thing you can do for yourself is to take control of your health now. This isn't just about living longer, it's about living better, whether you're on your own or surrounded by others. Being responsible for your health is crucial for maintaining quality of life, especially as you age. Whether you live alone or with someone else, health should always be a top priority. People who live alone and report high levels of satisfaction typically share a few key traits: economic independence, a positive outlook on life, good social skills, and a strong desire to live freely and without constraints. It's time to stop viewing single-person households as unusual or pitiable. In today's world, living alone often signifies comfort, freedom, and choice. The trend towards single-person households is growing, and it's not limited to those without families. Even if you have a spouse and children, you may eventually find yourself living alone due to children moving out, divorce, or separation. So, rather than dreading the thought of living alone, it's important to shift your perspective. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't be alone as I get older," or "I must not let myself be lonely," more people are embracing the mindset of, "I look better living alone, I'm free, and even living and dying alone is a happy life." This shift reflects the changing world around us, where independence is celebrated rather than feared. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 5 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Of course, some may argue that you shouldn't live alone as you age, but living with someone you don't get along with can be far more miserable than living alone. For older couples, it's generally best to stay together if they still share intimacy, respect each other's values, and equally contribute to household responsibilities. But let's consider the opposite scenario. What if an elderly couple is stuck together with little intimacy left, rarely communicates, and constantly criticizes one another? In such cases, it might be better for them to live separately. If one spouse is doing all the household chores while the other lounges on the sofa all day, this marriage would likely be less fulfilling than someone living alone and enjoying their peace. The fear of being alone often stems from the worry that no one will be there to care for you when you are sick or lonely. However, if you don't know how to live alone, you will find yourself constantly needing someone else's attention. And if those people don't visit as often as you'd like, you may start harboring resentment towards your children, thinking of them as burdensome. This is why part of growing up and growing older means learning how to be okay with being alone. It means taking responsibility for your happiness, your health, and your own life. True happiness in later life comes from knowing that you are capable of managing your own needs. Therefore, it's essential to start changing your perspective on living alone now. I don't fear it, embrace it. Think about it and prepare for it. Whether it happens sooner or later, you should be confident in your ability to live well on your own. Solitude, especially as you age, is not something to be mourned or feared. Instead, it's a gift and opportunity to escape the chaos and distractions of the world and face your true self. In those quiet moments, you can discover a new depth of self-reflection, warmth, and comfort. Solitude gives you the chance to nurture your inner peace, to fully embrace and care for yourself in ways that might have been overlooked during the busyness of earlier life. So rather than fearing the prospect of being alone, see it as a chance to reconnect with yourself, to live a life that is both fulfilling and free from unnecessary worry. By prioritizing your health physically, mentally, and emotionally, you set the foundation for a future that is not only independent but also deeply rewarding. As we come to the end of this discussion, it's clear that living well as we age, whether alone or with others, requires a new perspective on life, health, and relationships. We've explored the importance of embracing solitude, prioritizing health, nurturing meaningful relationships, and preparing for the future with an open and positive mindset. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What have you learned from this video? Is there one particular insight that resonated with you? Comment below and share one thing you've learned and plan to put into practice in your own life. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.